Good evening and welcome to another webcast. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about the film that we watched in class, Mugabe and the White African. This film was phenomenal. I can't get that out enough. It was amazing. I can see why it's winning awards around the world. It was very moving, very inspirational, and very informative. I don't have the words to describe what this movie did. Let's just begin from the beginning. This film focuses on one family and their farm that they bought post the revolution in Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia. They are a white family who owns a large amount of land there, and they are trying to keep the Zimbabwe government under President Mugabe from taking their farm. Um, some historical perspectives. Currently, Zimbabwe is facing a massive uh, debt crisis. Their inflation is through the roof. I believe it's upwards of a 1 trillion% inflation. Basically, the price of a good doubles every 2 days or so, which is astronomical to think about. So as a result, the Zimbabwe government keeps printing out more and more money in higher and higher denominations. They have a $1 billion note, so just keep that in mind. Um, Going back a little further, Zimbabwe was the victim of a civil war. It was formerly Rhodesia. Not terrorist groups, excuse me, two separatist groups, Marxist groups, in the 70s waged a guerrilla war against the Rhodesian government. They were Zanla and Zipra, and Mugabe was the leader of one of these groups. Ultimately, he won control, and as part of the post-war concessions, he promised to redistribute the land to Native Africans. Um, so, what this movie really questions is, what does it mean to be African? Can you be white and can you be African? Mugabe says no, and the filmmakers make this very clear in the film that Mugabe does not want any white farm owners around. So he embarked on a plan of redistributing the land, which includes forcibly taking the land away from farmers and give it to political cronies. Now, the crux here is that he is not giving the land to people who know how to use it. He is taking the land and giving it to his supporters. As a result, what was once known as Africa's breadbasket has now fallen into disrepair. Very little is exported. There is not a lot of food coming out of Zimbabwe. In fact, a lot of food has to be imported into Zimbabwe, which shows how in a few short decades the country can just turn to ruin. Um, this film, which was shot, in several different locations using different techniques, really highlights the injustice going on here. And I will readily admit that after watching this movie, I tend to come on the side of uh, the farm owners, but it raises some interesting questions. I think the biggest question that this film raises is legitimacy, and who has it. In this case, the filmmakers are trying to portray the farm owners as being the legitimate owners of the land. They paid for it post-revolution, they paid the banks back, they worked the land, they own it, etc., etc. They fought for it in court, which was a tremendous ordeal. The other question of legitimacy is, what legitimate rights do Native Africans have to this land? Obviously, it was taken from them during colonial periods by white settlers, so now they're trying to take it back. So one could argue that there is a very big claim that it should be given back to the native peoples. But then this question is, can you be a white African and can you have a legitimate claim to this land? it's not really an easy answer. There is no easy answer. And finally, another concept of legitimacy is what Mugabe is doing, is this legitimate? I would say no, because he is not actively helping his country. In fact, this policy has done nothing but harm his country. So we see some of these problems in what he is doing, and yeah, that nothing has been addressed. So I think, excuse me 1 second while I collect my thoughts. One of Mugabe and his cronies use a variety of tactics throughout this film, both in court and outside of court. I think the centerpiece of the movie comes down to the dialogue between the farmers and this one crony that is supposed to be receiving the land from the farmers. He is there to take the land. He says it is his land and he doesn't want you there. That, he doesn't want any whites in Zimbabwe, that it is his land and to get out, and that he will not move until he gets his land. And he vehemently opposes any Western or, any white presence within Zimbabwe, to the point where he says he would rather deal with, quote, the Chinamen. And it really raises some interesting questions. Alice brought up a unique point in the post-class discussion of, when he's talking about we would rather deal with the Chinamen, is he really just changing one form of colonial structure for another? Would he rather be working for the Chinese and just not for white Westerners? So it demonstrates the bitter hatred, the enmity there that many people experience. And they use several tactics. At the end of close to the end of the movie, you find out that the farmers were actually beaten, very severely, which shows, the tactics that are used are, horrible human rights violations, and that it is a regime run via fear. So it is a dictatorship that has lost its legitimacy, in my opinion, and it's sending the country into a spiral. I think what needs to be addressed here is whether people can own land and be white, and whether they have legitimate claims, and whether they are African. I'm going to say yes, they are African. At some point, they identify with the land, the people. They were born there. It is their home. Yes, they acquired this home through, a process that forced other people off this home, but I don't think you can blame the farmers themselves, especially since they were very keen to stress the fact that they purchased this land after the revolution. So I do think they have a legitimate claim to the land that they have, their farm. I also think that there does need to be some sort of land, redistribution. But it needs to be done in a responsible manner. One of which benefits everybody. Clearly, the current regime is not doing that. So, that being said, let's move on from there. So,